Good afternoon. Welcome back. This is Kids Corner Book Talks for Kids. My name is Sam. I am the children's librarian here at the Ukiah Branch Library of the Mendocino County Library System. And today we are going to be talking about 4 new books in the children's room. When I say new, I mean they have been published in the last 6 months. If you are visiting one of our library branches, those will be the books that have the red new stickers on the spine. That means it's been published within the last 6 months. All of the ones I have here have been published within the last month or two, so they're new. So we're going to talk about one chapter book today, a fictional chapter book. Sorry, 2 chapter books, one's fictional, one's nonfiction. The fictional one is Cress, Watercress, there we go, by Gregory Maguire. We will also be reading Wonder Women, 12 Geniuses Who Are Currently Rocking Science, Technology, and the World. That's by Tiera, Fletcher, and Ginger Rue. This is the nonfiction chapter book. We will also be learning about Shaped by Her Hands, Potter Maria Martinez. This is a wonderful biographical nonfiction picture book by Harber, Freeman, and Barbara Gonzales. And then we will be reading about Little Bunny, Big Germs, written and illustrated by Rosemary Wells. I'm sure you've heard that name before. So we'll be talking about those 4 new books today. So let's start with Cress, Watercress, written by Gregory Maguire and illustrated by David Litchfield. So before I say anything else, you should know, if you don't already, that this book was written by Gregory Maguire, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he is the man who wrote the chapter book Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which, as we all now know, went on to become one of the most, if not the most popular musicals on and off Broadway for like the last decade. So be ready for something great when he comes out with a new book. So that new book here is Cress, Watercress. This is the story of Cress, Watercress right here. We can just call her Cress. We don't have to say her whole name. A bunny who lives with Mama and Papa and little baby brother bunny Kip in a lovely warren. That's a rabbit hole where they live underground on the bank of a lovely river. But one night, Papa doesn't come home from his nighttime honey harvesting. Well, why is he out harvesting honey at nighttime? Well, you see, baby brother bunny Kip is a sickly sort of bunny, and he needs honey ginger tea very frequently to help soothe his sore throat and help him breathe. So Papa has to go out and search the forest for honey, which is very dangerous because the forest is a dangerous place for a bunny. So when Papa doesn't come home, Mama Bunny has to prepare for the worst. Unfortunately, that means that the whole family, Cress, Watercress, baby brother Bunny Kip, and Mama Bunny all move to a place called the Broken Arms, which is a tree apartment complex. And the illustration for this is so beautiful, I have to show you. This is the Broken Arms. It's a dead tree apartment complex in the forest, and it's inhabited by a very rude owl and landlord, a family of crazy high energy squirrels, a very, very nosy mouse that likes to stick his nose into everybody else's business, and some very gossipy songbirds. Can this apartment ever become home for Cress, Watercress and her family? And can the other animals, or all of the animals living in the Broken Arms, the apartment, become family? And will Papa ever come home? These are all questions that will be answered when you read Cress, Watercress by Gregory Maguire. So this is a beautiful, fully illustrated. First of all, let me just show you some of the illustrations. There's one in particular, it's on page 35, I think. There's one really beautiful illustration that is just a perfect example of the gorgeous illustrations in this chapter book. Oh, that's Cress, Watercress meeting one of the bears. I think that's Honey Bear Turk. And it's so beautifully illustrated, but it is a beautifully illustrated chapter book about adventure and friendship and loss and growing up. And like I said, the illustrations are breathtaking. There are quarter-page and half-page illustrations all throughout the book, and then there's the occasional full-page or full 2-page spread illustration, like the one where I showed you the apartment tree complex. Oh, they're so beautiful. And the chapter where Cress meets Tuck Honey Bear, that's the one that I showed you, is on page 60. It's the most stunning illustration, and that's a really good representation of the illustrations throughout the whole book. But like I said, this does have quite a lot of loss in it, and it is a quite heartbreaking story sometimes, but it's about growing up and overcoming and healing from loss, in addition to all the other things that I talked about. So obviously it's going to be sad, as with most children's chapter books, but there's a really good lesson to be learned. So for all that to say, I would recommend this for grades 3 or 4 and up. That's an appropriate reading level, I would say. It's not a very wordy book, and there aren't too many words that are more than 2, maybe 3 syllables, but you know, there's a lot of stuff that kids are going to have to work through that they might need some assistance with from parents, and if they're younger than grade 3 or 4, they just might not quite get the context. And it is 35 chapters and 216 pages, so it's a pretty big book for an emerging reader. But for those who think they can get through 216 pages, I highly, highly recommend it. Like I said, this is Cress, Watercress, written by Gregory, Maguire, and illustrated by the supremely talented David Litchfield. All right, so Cress, Watercress, that is our fictional chapter book. It was just published in March of this year, or sorry, April of this year. So next we're going to talk about a nonfiction chapter book. This one was published in May of this year, and this is called Wonder Women of Science, 12 Geniuses Who Are Currently Rocking Science, Technology, and the World. It was written by Tiera, Fletcher, and Ginger Rue, and illustrated by Sally Wern Comport. So this is a fully illustrated nonfiction chapter book, and it is amazing for voracious learners. Anyone who is interested in STEM, so that's science, technology, engineering, and math, or who is interested in learning about modern people who are currently rocking the science world, and maybe looking for some inspiration for their own future scientific endeavors. So this would be a really great book for anyone like that. There are 12 amazing women. There is an index at the beginning, or sorry, a contents, chapter of contents, where it shows you each of the women included in this book, including a chapter on the author, one of the authors, Tiera Fletcher. So 12 amazing women and their careers covered in 12 beautifully illustrated chapters from medical science. For example, Evelyn Galvin. Let me go to her page. On page 21, here's Evelyn, who is rocking the world of neurology and neurosurgery. So there's chapters on women who participate in medical science and are making huge strides in medical science, or who are working in climate science like Patricia Medici, or astrophysics and astronomy like David Newman and Sarah Seeger. So there are some really amazing things to be learned in here. It also has a very helpful glossary of terms at the back, right here, for those of us who aren't scientists quite yet and need some help understanding a lot of the words, as well as suggestions for further reading and for further STEM-related activities. So if you're looking for some suggestions for ways that you can become more involved in local STEM activities or community organizations or events, or even starting your own, there's that, as well as suggestions for further reading for those of us who are interested in learning more about these people. These 12 chapters are just bites of their lives. What if I want to read the whole cake? So this is an awesome book. The chapters are super brief. Each one's maybe less than 5-6 pages, and they cover the lives and careers from childhood all the way through their current careers of the women presented in the book. And between each chapter is a 2 or 3 page spread of information that is helpful to know for the context of that chapter. To explain what I mean, for example, after the chapter on Davina Durgana, who is the first woman after the author, is Davina Durgana. She fights human trafficking, which is extremely important to know about. So the chapter on Davina Durgana is followed by a spread on the difference between qualitative and quantitative research, so that the reader can further understand how Davina uses these two types of research to fight human trafficking. So they're very, very, very useful. Another example is the chapter on Marina Robinson Snowden. Let me find her really quickly. Marina Robinson Snowden, where are you? You're on page 91, and she uses her knowledge of science to fight for world peace. Let's go to her. Here she is right here. Here's Marina Robinson Snowden. So, for example, the spread after her chapter, where we learn that she uses her education in physics and nuclear science and engineering by ensuring that nuclear weapons are fully disarmed after countries have signed agreements saying that they are going to disarm their nuclear weapons. She ensures that they really, really do. So the chapter, or the spread after her chapter, explains the difference between nuclear fission and nuclear fusion, which is very important to know, especially if we want to understand why her work is so important for world peace. So I really love this book, but it is super dense. So I do not recommend it for very young readers who are going to try to tackle it on their own. If they want to read it with help from an adult or with an adult nearby so that they can ask questions and get illumination for contextual clues and ask questions about very real, very scary current world events that necessitate the scientific endeavors of these women, that's what I would recommend. But if someone wants to read it on their own, I highly recommend that they are reading level grade 5 or above. I just want to point out again that there are topics like human trafficking and nuclear war and things like that that are covered in here, and I am absolutely a proponent for kids learning about real world topics at a very, very early age, but I just want you to know that you should be handy to answer questions, because kids are probably going to have lots of questions if they read this book. So again, that was Wonder Women of Science, 12 Geniuses Who Are Currently Rocking Science, Technology, and the World by Tiera Fletcher and Ginger Rue, illustrated by Sally Wern Comport. So amazing book. I love it when kids learn about current world events, but be ready for some questions if you've got a kiddo that wants to read this one. All right, on to something that's more lighthearted. I also have a nonfiction picture book that is a biography called Shaped by Her Hands, Potter Maria Martinez. So this is a gorgeously written and illustrated biographical picture book. Sorry, there was something hanging in the screen right there. And it was written by Harber Freeman and Barbara Gonzales and illustrated by Aphelandra. And this is a wonderful picture book about a famous indigenous clay potter, Maria Povica Martinez. She was initially named Povica Martinez, which means pond lily in her native Tewa language, which is one of the languages spoken by the Pueblo people in the American Southwest, one of the many languages. She was originally named Povica, but Maria was added after her christening, so we know her as Maria Martinez. Importantly, I would love to point out that one of the authors, Barbara Gonzales, or Barbara, let me see if I can, I apologize if I butcher this, Barbara Tanmue Gonzales. Tanmue means sunbeam in Tewa. Her great-granddaughter, her eldest great-grandchild, is one of the co-authors and also learned this indigenous pottery method at her great-grandma Maria's knees, which just, oh, I'm going to cry. So, this is an amazing book written by one of the great-grandchildren of the woman who is the subject of the book, which is just amazing. So Maria, right here on the cover, was born in the late 19th century, which means the late 1800s, and she was always fascinated by making pottery. She even tried to make her own just by herself with clay from the riverbank and then tried to dry it out in the sun. But of course, they just crumbled when they dried because she didn't know that you need to fire pottery, which we learn about later in the book. So she goes to her aunt, Nicolasa, who is a very talented potter and is very knowledgeable about the traditional method of making pottery for her people. And her aunt Nicolasa teaches her the history and all of the things that she needs, and passes on, gosh, this image is so beautiful, passes on this knowledge that has passed from generation to generation of women, and now it is Maria's turn to learn it. I might cry. And so she teaches her this very important knowledge, and also teaches her that it is very important to share this knowledge so that their traditional Tewa pottery can live on into future generations. So Maria grows, and she continues to make this pottery as she gets older, and even when she meets her husband Julian and they start having kids. And eventually they come across a piece of pottery, a shard of pottery from an ancient dig in their area, and it's black. And they try to figure out how to do this, and eventually they do, and it becomes immensely popular, and that is when Maria gets international renown. She's recognized internationally for her talent. And so this is a gorgeous, beautiful biographical, so nonfiction picture book about Maria's life and how she has helped ensure the legacy of this beautiful indigenous style of making pottery for the Pueblo people in the American Southwest. So this is 30 pages of full, gorgeous color illustrations. And it's got pretty light text, including a 2-page spread at the back with more information about Maria Pubica Martinez. Let me show you. There's more information, for example, info on her name and more about her life and the Tewa people who are part of the Pueblo Nation in the American Southwest. And then notes from the authors where we learn about how Barbara is actually Maria's great-granddaughter. It's so sweet. And again, that makes this an own voices book. So the other author as well, Harber Freeman, is also an Indigenous woman. So I love it when we can find own voices books. That's always my favorite. And then also a list of resources if you would like to learn more about this style of pottery, other styles of Indigenous pottery, or Maria herself. I would recommend this for readers who are grade 2 and up, so 2nd grade and up, because it's pretty light text, but there are some pages that have like a full paragraph, and if you're not or if a kiddo isn't reading on their own yet, this book might be kind of difficult for them to get through. I would also really recommend it for any story time, especially if you are confident in shortening a book on the fly, skipping pages, figuring out how to include information without necessarily going page by page through the book. If that's something that you're comfortable with, I highly recommend this for any story time, especially one that's about pottery or Indigenous art or art in general or Indigenous cultures, specifically in the American Southwest, but Indigenous culture in general as well. So that is Shaped by Her Hands, Potter Maria Martinez, written by Harber Freeman and great-granddaughter Barbara Gonzales, and illustrated by Aphelandra. All right, so finally, our last one for today. I'm kind of verbose today, sorry. I've had a lot of coffee. I'm drinking iced coffee at 4:30. That's not a good idea. I have Little Bunny, Big Germs, written and illustrated by Rosemary Wells, a very prolific, very well-known, very well-loved children's picture book author. So, calling all P.J. Finnegan Bunny fans, he's back in a new book by Rosemary Wells, this time all about germs, what they are, and how they can make us sick, and how we can protect ourselves and others. So, P.J. Finnegan Bunny, as we all know, is 5.5 years old. He never seems to get any older. Lucky little bunny. He's 5.5 years old, and he begins to develop a cold. Oh no, and he absolutely hates to wash his hands. So, follow along as he learns what germs are, how they can make you feel icky, why it's so important to wash your hands, how germs travel from person to person, especially through sneezing, so why we need to cover our nose with our elbow or our hand and then immediately wash our hands, or with a tissue and then immediately throw away the tissue. And most importantly, follow along as he learns that when he feels sick, he needs to stay home and feel better before going back to school. Very apt for our current situation. So this is a lovely picture book 20 pages of very, very, very light text, as with most Rosemary Wells picture books, and her usual delightful illustration style, plus a page of tips at the end, very adorably titled Hygiene Tips for Every Bunny. Right here at the end, which goes over all the things I mentioned, covering mouth and nose, using tissues and throwing it away, washing your hands with soap and water and for how long, not touching parts of your face where there are openings so that you don't spread germs where they can get into your body, and especially eating and drinking and sleeping right so that you don't get sick in the first place. So I would recommend this book for all ages. As with most Rosemary Wells books, this one is very suitable for all age story times and for everybody, particularly though for a story time about health, taking care of our bodies, taking care of other people, and just being well in general. So that is Little Bunny, Big Germs, written and illustrated by Rosemary Wells. So that is 4 new books here in the children's room. I hope I didn't go on too long. And just a little bit of news for things going on in the children's room. On August 13th, we will be completing our current summer reading program, Read Beyond the Beaten Path. And to finish that up and celebrate another successful summer reading challenge, we will be having a program called Get Your Groove On. I have a local duo called the Aunties who normally go from school to school in the area to do a music program with the kids. They're going to be coming in for an hour from 3 to 4 p.m. on August 13th to help us dance and wiggle and sing and get our groove on to celebrate. There will also be individually wrapped snacks and drinks available, and it's just going to be kind of a social music gathering for kids. And then from 4 to 5, after the aunties, we will be working on a collaborative art project, which I will then display in the children's room. So if you want to take your art home, you're welcome to do so, but I would love it if you could leave it here so that we can all benefit from seeing your beautiful work displayed in the children's room. Aside from that, we have our normal programming every Friday mornings. I have toddler story time, although really right now it's more of a family story time. We've got all ages showing up. And that's at 10:30 every Friday. Every Saturday morning we have farmers market story time from 10 to 11. Every Tuesday afternoon we have Lego hour from 3 to 4, and every Wednesday afternoon we have a child, a dog, and a good book, where we have a registered therapy dog here in the kids' room ready to help your kiddos learn how to read. So practice reading, really. So that is the children's room news for now. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you later in the library. Bye!